Welcome back for another episode of the 5G Guys. I'm Wayne Smith, and I'm joined by my co-host, Dan McBall.
Hey, everyone. Welcome back, and thanks for listening. This will be our last episode of 2022. It's been fun the last few episodes to kind of rehash and think about everything we've talked about and what we've dove in for the year. And in our last episode, Wayne and I gave some predictions for 2022 and some big picture categories of topics that we're likely to discuss. And as a second part to that episode today, we thought that we would dive into some specific episodes we're working on, some specific content we're working on as a preview to 2022. So what do you think, Wayne?
Yeah, it's been interesting to take stock in about the guests, look forward, to look back and what's going on. And I think there's a lot more to dive into in 2022. It's going to be an exciting year. I think we'll continue to see changes in the industry and a lot of exciting breakthroughs. So with that, you want to jump in and talk about it?
Yeah, for sure. I think I've been spending a lot of time the last few weeks looking at people that have reached out, for one. Thanks to our listeners that have reached out with episode ideas and taking stock of that, as well as just thinking more holistically about all of the things coming up this next year and some specific topics. I know on the area of listener outreach, we've had a couple of listeners that have reached out asking about how they can get into wireless as a career. So for sure, I think we will definitely tackle careers in wireless pretty early on in the year. Talk a lot about the different kinds of openings and jobs that there are in the wireless industry, how you go about, connecting with companies and what kinds of education and background kind of fit well into those jobs. I know, Wayne, for you and in your company, you guys have been hiring hot and heavy this last year and probably have a lot of good insight into that for listeners.
Yeah, it's challenging. I mean, I think we can go through some of where we see hot areas and different categories of openings that we have. I mean, but I definitely jump in, talk about what's worked for us and what haven't, for sure.
Yeah. And then I think, related as well is I think we'll have a couple episodes on workforce development. This industry is currently suffering, just like almost every industry in the U.S. is, with a worker shortage. And so I think we'll probably have an episode digging into that. But beyond the general, worker shortage that's going on in the U.S., wireless in particular has some unique challenges on top of that with regard to just the huge growth that's coming on in terms of the amount of network that has to be built relative to what's been built in the history of this industry. And that's adding an additional complexity into worker shortages. So I think we'll dive into that. And then, on top of that, I was thinking about this. There's a lot of advancements in technology and AI to help with that as well, right? So the other side of the coin is that technology and AI is making it easier for people to do their work. Things like drones that are making it where we don't have to have as many tower climbers, for example. So probably a good episode on that is in order next year as well.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. The workforce side of it, it comes back down to, I think for a lot of companies, and it will be one at Vertex that we'll invest in, is training. We have to do a better job of training. And to your point, the tool selection and how we execute the work, I think one of the big gaps in the industry is a lot of skilled folks that have experience in building networks a lot of times become data entry specialists in software, and you're taking them out of where their specialty is. So we need to make sure that alignment between tools and the experience is then used for training and building the workforce. So there's some of my opinions, but it's definitely going to be a big topic for all of us starting the year.
Yeah, for sure. Let's see what else. We started our podcast back this last summer, and we dove really into a lot of fundamentals around, Cellular 101, right? The basics of how it works. And we have yet to do the same for some of the other wireless technologies out there like Wi-Fi. So for sure, we'll get some experts and we'll dive into, Wi-Fi 101, and there's a lot more to wireless than just cellular, right? And so a lot more fundamentals, a lot more how it works around, what's going on with other wireless technologies. There's, microwave and, SCADA and all kinds of really cool other technologies that are wireless that we'll dive into, I think, as a 101, which will be great as well.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, everything's evolving. There's no shortage of topics,
and converging, right?
Yeah.
All of these technologies used to be very different and you didn't really see overlap between them. And so I think as we dive into use cases, for example, and that's something we'll dive into, is we'll start to see, as users and listeners understand how these technologies work, how they work together. And the use cases, I think, will really point that out. What are some use cases that you've kind of inventory you think that we'll make some episodes around this next year?
Oh, well, I think it's still always interesting to talk about the large venues, because it's a convergence fed by fiber, augmented by cellular. Wi-Fi is a big component in it, and it brings 5G and all of the new technologies around 5G, gambling, stats, all of that data information, and they're getting better. I mean, the venues, and I think it's a great use case to do. Other use cases, I think you'll start to see the push into the private network. How do companies take advantage? I think you have to look at, like, what do they want to do, and then backwards into it. Like, if they're trying to maximize the use of AI, machine learning, and how they manufacture or how they process or whatever that it is, you have to say, all right, how do we make that more efficient for that company? And you start to look into use cases. How do we get there? Because they're getting there today, but it's not a well-oiled machine. It's like an erector set that was built backwards, in a sense. It needs to be optimized to make sure that those companies can utilize the technology without, I guess, cost overruns, where it's really cost effective. So I do think that's going to be the big subject. We all know what, some releases shortly. A lot of the big players are going to get into that game. So there's just a lot of efficiency out there for companies.
A quick word of thanks to today's sponsor, Vertex Innovations. For over 17 years, Vertex has been building the nation's wireless and broadband networks. Providing project management, network engineering, and construction oversight are just some of the ways Vertex helps their clients. So if you're looking for more of a partner to help you with your wireless network designs, construction, implementation, or operations, reach out to Vertex. You can find them at vertex-us.com. That's VERTEX-us.com. Yeah, for sure. So we're working on episodes. We'll probably have a specific episode around manufacturing, how, some leaders in the automated manufacturing world and how they're leveraging wireless and edge computing and AI. So hear from them, and also working on an episode with a school district. There's more than one that have done this, but one of the school districts out there that has built their own private network to reach out to their families, to their students, make sure they're connected, especially in this day and age of remote learning, right? So we'll have an episode around that for sure. Let's see, we've got a contact that we're working on to put an episode together around how wireless is being used for security and surveillance. If you've driven around and seen at parking lots at a Walmart or a construction site, these poles in the air with a flashing blue light, that's how wireless is being used for security and surveillance. And so may dive into an episode around that. Also, a lot of people don't realize it, but if you're watching Monday Night Football, you're seeing these live camera shots from pylons on the end zone and all of these different ways that you're experiencing television and live production of television. And so we hope to have some guests to learn more about how wireless and 5G has enabled that. Heck, you even have commentators that are calling the game that aren't even at the game. Right?
It's crazy.
Yeah. So hope to have some episodes on that. So those are some examples of some specific episodes we have in the works for private wireless as well. And that's like, not to mention everything that's going on in the public commercial world. There's a lot more episodes to have in that regard, right?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, I just think it's to get your mind around where it's all going. It is like drinking from a fire hose. I mean, use cases are starting to come out. An interesting thing that I think that we should talk about is everything that I see or read about 5G. It's about VR, right? It's about AR, VR, medical, in instance, in education. And so it'd be fun for us to dive into some fringe cases on what will 5G be used to, like in gaming?
Mhm.
Like, is that going to be a big thing? Of course, we all know about Facebook's new Meta launch and, what that means and how can we see how the technology is going to be used for that. Maybe some in the crypto world and then the NFTs, like where does this all come together based more so than on the convenient being able to access the information and do it. But yeah, it's a lot to get your mind around and it comes so fast and it changes so rapidly.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think also on the public facing kind of commercial side of wireless, we definitely have one or two guests in the works to talk about autonomous vehicles, right? Driverless cars,
Oh,
and
yeah.
how that technology is very, very dependent on wireless to work. You've got vehicle to vehicle communication, vehicle to network communication, what's going on in that space. So we'll have a couple episodes hopefully on that. Smart cities, smart homes, lots going on out there. Some really cool use cases on what's going on with communities taking control of wireless and how they use wireless to make their city more functional, smart. So yeah, so some really cool stuff there. And then I think the other thing that we're working on that I hope our audience would be interested in is more on the business finance side of things, right? We have a couple of guests we're working on to talk about like how does a cellular carrier even make money? Like what does their business look like? Right? Why do they charge us the way they do? Why do things cost what they cost? So you're looking at those kinds of things. Spectrum, it's big business, man. It's like a resource just like gold or oil, right? Understanding the business of spectrum. I think that's another area that we've got some topics that we're working on. And then satellite. We've talked about satellite. What does satellite look like both technology wise as well as from a business standpoint? You were just talking to me about Elon Musk and some of the ins and outs of what he's doing with satellites, right?
No, yeah, I think it's a huge one. It's interesting when it comes to satellite. The people that I know that live in rural America, they always ask me, how do we get better broadband speed? And the answer is not an easy answer in all applications of getting fiber somewhere close to their home or some kind of microwave shot or whatever. So I think it'll be a big thing as it gets launched, and satellite will be common go-to for a lot of folks who need to broadband just like that or increase broadband. Yeah, I think those are great. I mean, all great topics, and they fill up quite a bit, with how deep you can go on each one of these categories that you're jumping into.
And then I think probably one of the biggest areas that you and I bring to the table with this podcast that we really haven't dug into much, and we have big plans for this next year, which is just our network of people that work for the carriers, experts, insiders that can really open the kimono, if you will, to our listeners to understand how these networks are built, what the challenges are that the Verizons and the AT&Ts of the world have in keeping up with technology, building and operating these networks. So definitely have plans to have a lot of those folks that Wayne and I know come join us and share their stories.
Yeah, I think that's going to be awesome. We haven't done it alone. Right. There's tons of companies and people out there who we work with over the years who still work in the industry. And they're the ones a lot of times that turn the screws and drive the nails and actually make it happen. They meet the deadlines and they get your broadband, whether it's fiber or wireless. So I do look forward to that side of it, trying to give a little bit back to the folks who actually execute and build a lot of it. Pretty exciting year coming up.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think kind of to cap things off on what we're working on is some more episodes around security, right? Health and security. We definitely plan to have an episode or two around that. One specific episode around identity, right? We're in a world now where our identity is defined by things that they're not real. They're virtual, our virtual identity, right? We all have a phone, and our phone has now become our identity, and our accounts and platforms like Facebook are our identity. And understanding the technology behind our identities and what's going on to secure that and to make sure our identities aren't stolen, right?
Yeah, and another piece that you tried and it worked out well is the flash pods. And that was one of the most, I noticed on my profiles, one of the most shared articles that we had done so far in a podcast. I've seen that shared by so many different connections on LinkedIn and stuff. So I think people really want to see what's in the news quickly on a Monday morning and get those things out and share it with their friends, how it might impact them in their business. So that's really exciting. What did you think about that one?
Yeah, no, I think it was awesome. I think doing the flash pods is definitely, we got a lot of good feedback from listeners on that, and so we'll definitely do more flash pods. So when there's new news, and there will be lots of big news that comes out, just like there always is, around regulatory decisions and mergers and acquisitions, and you know different things like, this last year, how many times did we have news around, some company got compromised by a hacker? What does that mean? So yeah, you're right. We will definitely do more of those flash pods, more kind of current policies, current affairs. I think those were fun.
Well, perfect. Do we cover the list, or there's probably going to be more things, huh?
There will definitely be more, but this is what's in our consciousness right now for going into next year. And it's been a great year. Really have enjoyed doing the podcast with you and reflecting back on, where we've been, and boy, the road ahead looks pretty bright. No,
I agree. And a big thanks to all of our listeners and fans out there taking the time to listen to the podcast, giving us feedback. Have a great holiday, and a better 2022. We look forward to getting right back at it in January. And thank you, Dan. I've learned a lot. It's been a humbling experience for me. Just realizing there's so many facets to this great industry that we've been lucky enough to be part of. So thanks again.
Yeah, thank you, Wayne. It's been great to be your partner on this journey. And most of all, thanks to you, our listeners. We really appreciate your engagement. As always, I have to say, go to 5gguys.com to stay engaged with us and connect with us. That gives us a lot of energy, a lot of ideas. If you haven't already subscribed to our newsletter, you can do that on our website as well. You can engage with us with 5G Guys on Twitter, on Facebook, on LinkedIn. So the more you guys engage with us, the more it really gives us good content to continue to give you what you want to hear from us. So thanks again. Have a great holidays. This will be us signing off for the rest of 2022. We look forward to our new episodes in 2022. So happy holidays, and take care and be well.
Take care.
Thanks for listening to the 5G Guys. For more resources and to connect with Dan and Wayne, check out their website at 5gguys.com. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to hit that follow button and share this episode with your friends and family.